The atmosphere was warm and sticky, but what was Jake to expect when making his rounds around the forest? It was late in the evening, eclipse had already passed, and everyone was already home. Jake made his way through the forest, pushing sticks and branches, occasionally stopping, letting the odd viper wolf pass. "Devil Dog to Eagle 1, Sector 1 is clear," Jake said into the intercom. Jake walked forward, stopping at a cliff, listening to the rushing water flow. "Devil Dog to Eagle 1, do you read me?" Jake said for there to be no answer. "Eagle 1, answer me." Jake began to pace back and forth, wait for an answer, only for there to not be one. "Damn it, now is not time to be playing games, Loke," Jake said, finally turning around. Jake's heart sank to his stomach. A massive figure stood in the trees, hunched over. An unsettling crunch echoed through the forest, the sound of chalking coming from the unfortunate soul unlucky enough to becoming the creature's victim. Dad! Jake froze in his footsteps, hearing the shriveled attempting to speak to him. "Oh, Loke! Boy, is that you?" Jake said shakily, slowly walked towards the devoured body. He stopped dead in his tracks, hearing the unpleasant thud hit the ground, and a shrilled cracking sound of the mangled body laying before him, aggressively splashing blood onto his body, causing him to flinch. He felt like he was going to vomit. Loke laid there, entrails exposed, jaw agape, and broken flesh torn to shreds, showing no signs of life. He was dead. He couldn't breathe. He couldn't move. Why couldn't he move? He wanted to dive down and embrace his no long breathing child. He wanted to scream. He wanted to cry, but he couldn't. Coward! Jake's eyes shot up only to meet a vapid, dusky eye paired with a bloodshot cobalt cataract. A visual smile splayed across the creature's face, showing vivid dagger-like teeth. Jake couldn't move. He wanted to run, but his body wouldn't allow it. "The great Toruk Makto is a coward and a liar." Jake's eyes followed as the large man-made creature slinked down the tree, finally landing on the ground. Crushing Loke's skull with ease, Koi loomed over him with a wide smile splayed on his face, slowly reached down, picking up Loke's necklace. "Such a shameful father letting your child meet such a grim fate. But what can you expect from a lying coward who ran from his home and put his family in grave peril?" Koi said, throwing the necklace to the hard grass, touring it into soft sand under Jake's feet, but leaving the grass around Koi. Jake stood his ground, trying not to look intimidated. "I left the forest to protect my family and the clan," Jake said, trying to move forward. "You left because you didn't want to die," Koi said, making Jake fall back into the sand. "You ran with your tail between your legs like the coward you are because deep down, you know you were going to die because of me." The earth beneath Jake began to swallow him, making him run the opposite direction. With that, the chase was on. Jake's heart pounded in his chest as he heard the guttural screams and howls of Koi behind him, destroying everything in his path. The cliff he just needed to get to the edge of the cliff. He felt like his lungs were on fire. Why did it feel like it was farther than before? All he could see were glimpses of dark greens and blacks. But he knew he was right on his trail. He could see it, the cliff. The finish line, all he had to do was jump, but the searing pain stopped him from doing such a thing. "No more running, Jake, your time has ran out." The deep, stalking voice echoed through the forest like an empty room. Jake tried to move, but he couldn't. The pain wouldn't let him. He reluctantly looked down, only to find shedded pieces of flesh where his legs used to be. Jake tried scream, only for a firm grip to clasp around his throat, dragging him to the heavens. "Poor Jake, back to your original sorry, useless state," Koi said, squeezing tighter around his throat. Jake tried to choke out some words, only for the little bit of air he had left to leave out his body. "Isn't it funny without this body, the body you stole from your dead brother, you're nothing but a useless stain in a wheelchair?" Koi said, dangling him over the cliff. Jake could see the water turn blood-stained, distant screams, replacing the sound of the crashing waves. "Without this body, you wouldn't be the great Toruk Makto. Isn't it funny that all the people you stole from are dead now, Tsuti Tom? Even grace all the people you dare to call your family." Koi rose Jake to the highest point, stepping over the cliff. "Are dead!" Koi flung him into the roaring, blood-soaked water. Jake got swallowed into the water, only for hands to drag him to the bottom. Jake squirmed and thrashed, in the holds of the hands finally hitting solid ground. It was the lad floor. The shooting pain from Jake's missing legs shot through his body, causing him to frantically look up, only to see a reflection. He was human. He could hear the distant steps of Koi stalking closer. He had to move. He had to get away. He began to crawl on his belly, causing blood to trail behind him. "There's no use hiding, Jake. I can smell your fear." Jake began to squirm fast, only to stop for a brief second, seeing a bright red light shining in the distance. He didn't know why, but he had to get to it. He had to push it to make this holy terror go away. Jake could hear the distant doors open with an unpleasant hiss.
"There you are, you little shit!"
He could hear Koi stride toward him with quickness, causing Jake to move faster. He could feel his stomach begin to split, spilling his entrails and bowels on the cold, hard floor. His eyes went bloodshot as he dragged his exposed belly. He was right there, he just had to. Jake was snatched out of his thoughts. Literally, he felt the hard tug on his mouth as he was pulled back onto a cold chest. More hands began to grab at his mouth, causing it to go wider than it was supposed to. "Where are you going? The fun is just starting." He could feel a warm liquid running down his face. He was crying. "Oh, don't be a pussy," Koi said, slamming him on the ground. He wanted to move, but he couldn't. Koi sat on top of him, grabbing his axe out of thin air. He watched as he rose it over his head. Time's arrow has finally met his end. Koi slammed down the axe, and his vision went black. Jake shot up from his sleeping mat, frantically feeling himself. He was whole. Nothing was missing. He was perfectly fine. "Ma, Jake." Jake looks over to see a worried Neytiri. Nedium, Kiri, and Tuck were all sleeping in a pile, looking like a bundle of sleeping cats. "Ma, Jake," Neytiri said again, this time slightly touching his shoulder, causing him to flinch. She could see the fear in his eyes like a deer in headlights. "Calm down, it's just me," she said, rubbing his back. "I was dreaming." Jake mumbled, "Yes, honey, it was a really bad nightmare. I didn't think you would get up," she said slowly. Jake sat there in his own sweat, contemplating about the dream until he finally realized. "Loke, where's Loke?" Jake jumped up frantically, looking around, only stopping when Neytiri grabbed his hand, guiding him outside. A hut. He has been sleeping there since his arm was mended by the chief's daughter. Neytiri said, point at random hut. Jake could see Loke sleeping outside the hut, leaning on its walls. Looking further, he could see something breathing behind him. It was Koi. Granted, he was fast asleep, but he could feel death looming over Loke's shoulder, causing him to pull his axe out, only being stopped by Neytiri. "Calm, ma, Jake. Calm, the boy means no harm, actually. It was Loke's wish to sleep with him after the harsh comments that were said to him. He thought it would be best if he watch over Koi. Not even Netiam could coax him back to sleeping with us," she said longingly, staring at the sleeping boy. Jake could see Koi sleeping behind, softly breathing. He wished he would stop at that very moment. Jake could feel his blood begin to boil, curling his hand into a fist, wishing it was around Koi's neck. "Jake, I think the stress of everything is getting to you. How about we go lay back down before sunrise? Loke is a smart boy, he knows what he is doing. You just have to trust him," she said, holding his closed fist. "Please, Jake, get some rest. For me." Neytiri pleaded to him. Jake could see the worry in her eyes. He couldn't do that. He was making her suffer because of him and his stupid but very reasonable fear. "Okay, honey, I'll go back to sleep." She gave him a sweet smile and kissed him on the cheek. "Thank you.